desolation. You are hunted.
Alrighty. The focus of this video is to talk about the Bloodbarrier shield. This shield here. So the way this shield works, whenever you block, you'll get a corrupted blood stack onto the enemy based off of your health. The default is 50% health, but it can be corrupted to do a little bit higher, all the way up to like 61, I think is plausible. So yeah, pretty simple how it works. You get this corrupted blood both on the parry and on the passive block. So you can play it either way. You can manually parry things and they'll get corrupted blood, or if you've got passive block, you can do it that way. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much specifically about my build. I'll do a little bit at the end, but I definitely recommend check out the builds on PoE2 Ninja. There's a ton of new ones popping up, like as we speak. These new builds are coming up and very easy to find because you just sort by max life and they pop right up to the top. So the only real thing to note about my particular build is that because I'm a Warbringer, I am able to block all the hits, including the AoE hits. So if you don't play Warbringer, you'll just have the default block behavior. So what are the pros of using this shield in a build? Boss killing, you can be AFK or near AFK the majority of the time, which is super nice. Some bosses are definitely easier than others, but most bosses with such a high life pool and with capped block, you can pretty much hang around with any boss without much problem. You know, eventually they might get a big hit through, but you've got plenty of regen, plenty of life to handle it. For leveling, you can equip this shield at level 16. Just be careful you don't put a high level rune in it. That ups the level requirement. Without the rune, you get to level 16, and it's very helpful throughout the campaign with anything you can parry, even before you invest in getting higher block chance and all that. Just manually parrying things can be very helpful for like tanky rares, stuff like that. You do have to be careful because your stun meter will fill up. The interface for the stun meter is pretty bad. I wish they would make this look a little better so you don't have to look at this tiny little bar to see. With this tiny little sliver, if this fills up, you'll stun, you'll fall over for like 2 seconds. It's pretty annoying. But otherwise, as long as you can manage that, the parry is pretty helpful throughout the campaign. It is worth noting though that there are a couple campaign bosses that don't have any blockable attacks. The worst one is the Act 2, like the bone boss, like the big bone worm that comes out. All he does is big AoE slams, so until you get your second ascendancy point, nothing that he does is blockable. So my solution to that was just make a public party, and a couple people jumped in and helped me kill him. So you got some way, you can't cheese all the campaign bosses with this shield. Another big pro, scaling your offense with your life pool feels amazing. This is a common, just ARPG trope, is if you can, reduce down the number of things you need to scale, it tends to work out pretty well. So getting a big life pool that's creating big damage is really nice. And it's a shield, so you still have a free hand for a weapon if you want. So I was only using it for movement skills, either using a spear or a mace to move around, but I've seen other people, you can use actually a legit weapon and have that to do attacks and stuff, or there's other cool weapons you can use for other effects. So for the cons, if you're just trying to use the shield, there are definitely some cons. The enemy hit rate kind of determines your DPS, so really slow enemies that hit really slow will take really long to stack up the corrupting blood, so they'll have less dot damage, take longer to kill, yada yada. One trick for this, particularly for big bosses that have big health pools, the seismic cry plus the corrupting cry support will let you refresh the duration of the corrupting blood stacks that the shield puts on. So the way that would work is you parry or block a couple attacks from big boss, they get 1 or 2 stacks of corrupting blood on them from the shield, and then you can run around and use the seismic cry with the corrupting cry to refresh that duration and at least keep those couple high stacks of damage going throughout the fight. And it usually doesn't take that long because they'll keep attacking, they'll get a couple new high stacks, right? But this little technique is a good way to deal with some of the really big, slow, slanty bosses. The next con, there are like 2 particular unblockable mobs in the game that are really annoying when you run into. I'll show a clip of the Undertaker and also the Bog Witches. Nothing they do is blockable, so you need a way to deal with these if you're forced to kill them, right? You either can use the Corrupting Cry with your Seismic Cry and kind of just wait for them to die that way, or maybe a weapon swap or another weapon, something like that. But that said, there's only 2 specific mobs that have this problem. Everything else, it eventually does something you can block, or, you know, attacks really quickly and you block right away. So do note, this is something I've noticed, there are quite a few builds out there that I when I look at least on the PoE Ninja, they don't have any real way to deal with these mobs. And like if you do a normal map with no boss and they get unlucky and you roll a rare Undertaker or something, then you won't be able to complete the map unless you have some alternative way to kill him. Another con is very slow pack clear. It's kind of funny to watch. Like they'll make a little ring around you, and then if anybody else tries to come attack, they just sort of wait their turn and queue up, and you know, once the mob in front of them dies, then they'll step up and try to hit you. So on the one hand, it is very chill. Like, you know, the big swarm of mobs rushing at you isn't going to do anything to you. You'll be totally fine. You can tank it. But clear-wise, unless you've got alternative ways, if you're just using just the shield to clear everything, it's going to take a while. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, and there is actually some interesting kind of like movement. Like your positioning really matters. If you sort of move and position right, you sort of can increase your DPS, which can be sort of fun. But ultimately, especially when I was first leveling this and just running the shield, most maps, you know, you're definitely not clearing the full map. You're just going straight to the rares, killing the boss, getting out of there. Another con, it isn't an armored shield, so there's no shield charge. The shield skills don't apply, which if you want to use those, you're out of luck. And then finally, just block in general can be kind of unlucky sometimes. Every once in a while, you'll just get an unlucky string of hits that all make it through your block, and so that's kind of rare, but it will happen every once in a while. Well, it's where it's just like, it feels like the block turns off. All right, next up, just the build fundamentals, just like the key things that anybody using this shield is going to want. Core stats are pretty obvious: life, strength, and then life regen. I think life regen is more important than you think. It, especially since your life pool is so high, this life regen just gets more and more value. And then this is how you would deal with all of your damage over times, and then your recovery as well from when you get hit. Then of course you want to get your block chance as high as you can, and I would recommend avoiding evasion, just because if you evade a hit, you can't block the hit, and that's it. For other things I'd recommend, getting a leap skill for the Consecrated Ground is pretty nice. There's this Holy Descent support, so whenever you leap slam, the holy little circle there gives you 5% regen. But you can see it doesn't last too long, but when you're actually using it, you can kind of just hop around, wait a couple seconds, things die, hop to the next pack, and the regen's pretty nice. So I do recommend that. But I also saw there is a ring that gives you Consecrated Ground when stationary, so if you could go that route as well if you don't want to be using a leap skill. So that's lots of cool things you can do there. And then also the anvil, this unique amulet here for block chance. It definitely is noticeable, but I wouldn't say it's super impactful, at least in my experience. So if you like it, you totally can use it. But personally, I preferred having an amulet just with more life and more stats on it instead. Another great option would be the Defiance of Destiny, to get at 10% when you're hit. That 10% is going to be quite a lot if you've got when you've got a high life pool. So yeah, definitely some good options there. To take a quick look at some passive tree stuff, I wouldn't recommend this tree exactly. I've definitely been doing a lot of experimenting with this, but I just want to point out some key things to look for on the tree. Life regen on the tree is really nice. One of the few things you can get from the tree specifically, so nice to get as much of that from the tree. And then of course getting all of the block chance, where you can get it all around here. Pretty straightforward to find. One thing I'm definitely missing in this build is the block nodes up here. You'll see this in other builds. Going up here to get this damage node is pretty nice, coupled with this damage node down here is pretty good. But really that's kind of the long and short of it. Just go for regen, go for block, get a bunch of strength if you want, and then from there it's kind of up to you for what you want to do. Oh yeah, also the regen up in the Templar area is pretty juicy. Definitely recommend going up there. And then, you know, my build, I'm doing this whole weapon swap thing. You don't need to worry about that if you're just going straight for the shield. One thing I wanted to mention, especially for leveling, if you're going to use the parry a lot, this node here, the Defender's Resolve, the heavy stun buildup empties 50% faster. You'll definitely notice that. This little bar will drain much quicker. And the way it works, if you parry while it's draining, it'll stop draining and you'll have that amount of stun will kind of hold over for your next hit. So having the stun empty 50% faster definitely makes the parry mechanic feel a lot better if you want to do the parry thing. Alright, so that's everything that's like the core of the shield build, like what you can expect to see with the shield and what you can do with it. Again, there's more and more of these builds popping up on PoE Ninja, which are pretty cool, so I definitely recommend checking them out. As far as my particular build goes, I went for stacking Veil of the Night with Comb's Heart to get a pretty hefty life pool here, and then the rest of the rares are all just searching for life, strength, and chaos resistance, and only paying a few X for each. And so yeah, the weapons, nothing special, just tried to get us high attack speed and life gain on kills, kind of cool. But yeah, that's the main setup for the block side of things. You really don't have any skills besides, you know, if you want a movement skill for Consecrated Ground, like I mentioned, the Seismic Cry is nice, but other than that, the only other skill that I run for shield stuff is having something sustained. You can do Orb of Storms, you can do the, what is it, the little Bone Shedder that puts the spears out. They put up these fonts too, so these two font supports for a little bit more regen, 2% regen's nice, and mana regen's nice. And then I just put faster casting, because why not? But yeah, that's everything for the shield side of things. My build, I'm also using a Wrath Pith on the weapon swap and having a blast with that. You do die a shit ton more with the Wrath Pith because you lose a lot of your block defense, but it's a lot of fun to have some fireballs is what I've been playing around as alternative to play around with. But again, that's just my particular build, and I have a older video where I ramble on about everything going on here if you want to see that. So yeah, that's everything about the shields. Definitely recommend it. I think there's lots of fun things to see, and like I said, I can't stress enough, check out the builds on PoE2 Ninja. Lots of cool ideas popping up there to play around with this item. So yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching.